Welcome to Type Tune Tint. I'm Tom Kranz. Today's guest is a member of the Seattle Jazz Hall of Fame, a musician with an epic collection of musical accomplishments, not to mention very listenable tunes like this one, an original called Beignet Boogie. Bill Anschell has had musical mojo since high school. After getting 2 college degrees and living as a journeyman pianist for years, he moved back to his native Seattle, where he's a busy composer and performer with more than a dozen albums under his name, incidental music appearing in TV shows such as The West Wing and The Wire, and endless credits as an accompanist and sideman. And now his latest project, a collection of stories that made me laugh out loud, pulling back the curtain on gig life and the musicians whose hopes and dreams are either elevated to new heights or dashed against the rocks of despair. And I'm joined by Bill Anschell from his palatial estate in Seattle, Washington, actually from his studio, which I love because, you know, what could be better than being surrounded by a piano and musical instruments as opposed to a set of dirty blinds and a bunch of books that you can't read. Bill, how are you?
Well, I could turn the camera in a different direction and you
No,
get all of
please.
that.
No, it's all good.
Okay. Yeah, I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm great. It's great to meet you. I met you through the graces of a mutual friend of ours, my friend Don, who I've interviewed on this
Right.
podcast, who I've known for a really long time. Excuse me. He's a Seattle musician as well. And he sent me the book that is among the many things we're going to talk about today, which Bill wrote. Basically, you released it last year, right? 2025, it came out.
Very late in 2025.
Gotcha,
Really,
right.
it's only about a month old.
Yeah, so we're at the cutting edge here. I love it. It's
Yeah.
called Benched Jazz Stories. And these are stories that you culled through your many years doing all kinds of music and performances, correct?
Yeah, the backstory on the stories is that you know how people send out holiday newsletters, Christmas newsletters. I always sent one of those out and I started just writing little stories for it. So I was sending them to my friends and people were liking them. So, and they kept bugging me to put them in a book.
Well,
So
when
I
did you
spent
start
about,
writing these anyway? How long ago?
God, the oldest one, which is, I think the jam session story, I would guess 1990 maybe.
Okay, so this has been an ongoing thing. You've been writing the stories. Did you envision making it into a book all along, or did you just decide I better write this shit down before I forget it?
Yeah, I had no inclination to make a book out of it for a long time. But actually, when I started my jazz etiquette column, Mr. PC's Guide to Jazz
Yeah,
Etiquette and Bandstand Decorum, which is heavily represented in that book,
it is.
uh, you know, I have there's a regular Facebook page for that column and allaboutjazz.com runs it. So a lot of people have seen it and they were really encouraging me to put all this stuff together in a book. So that's kind of, I bowed to public sentiment.
Well, I can see why. You're a great writer. Seriously, you've got this kind of cutting edge. It's a combination of cynicism and affection both together for the music and for the whole, the whole musician, the gigging, the practicing and the lack of practicing and the crazy shitty venues. I just love it. One of the chapters in the book here, the at the end one, it's called Careers in Jazz, and it's a cynical, I shouldn't use that, a satirical look at how people, young musicians envision this great career they're going to have in jazz after they spend all this money on their college education and they're practicing, or maybe they're not, but you kind of break it down in all the different ways that careers in jazz can go right or go wrong. But that story, that's the one that got like 700,000 hits on the website, right?
On allaboutjazz.com. And
Yeah.
that's, but it's on tons of websites, different languages, different countries.
No kidding. And when
Uh,
did you write that? You wrote that some years ago, right?
yeah, I wrote it after I moved back to Seattle. My guess would be between 2005 and 2010, maybe. It's,
Wow.
it's my second most recent story.
Yeah,
And
no
yeah, it's
kidding.
definitely the one that got the most attention. There was actually a Wall Street Journal article about the disappearing jazz audience, and
Mm.
they heavily referred to that story in it. And there are quite a few people who hate me for having written it. So I appreciate that you call my writing
Oh
cynical
well,
but affectionate, because that is exactly what I mean it to be. But just let me just make an announcement, if I
please
may.
do.
To anybody reading my stories and thinking that I was writing about you, I was not.
Well, that actually leads to a question I was going to have about writing memoirs. And I've had this conversation before, writing kind of nonfiction that's maybe it is a little bit fiction, whatnot. You say in your introduction that these stories really happen to either you or people you know.
Right.
But you mention a lot of names in here. Are the people in here, are they depicted accurately? And are the names you picked for these guys really the names? I mean, I'm referring to my favorite story called The Weekend Warriors, not the Weekend Warriors, folks, The Weekend Warriors, which is a great story about a gig at a wedding reception at a Westin hotel that's just about as crappy as you can make it. And, my favorite two characters there are the drummer named Bam Bam and the piano player named Pissface. Were those their real names, or did you just dub them that for the stories?
Definitely nobody's real name. I mean,
Excellent. All
seriously,
right.
there's not a single character in any story that represents one person I know. They're all
Okay. So they're
conglomerates.
composites.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. All right. So that's a good thing for me to know because I'm writing my memoir and I so dearly want to name some people, especially the assholes who I came across, but I don't want to get sued and it's not really about that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to read a couple passages from the book in a second, but I want to talk more about your music a little bit. So
Okay.
you were born in Seattle. You went to school at Oberlin and then later on to Wesleyan where you got a degree in music, correct?
Right.
And then you kind of traveled around as a kind of a journeyman jazz musician, and then you
Yeah.
ended up in Atlanta where you spent quite a bit of time, correct?
Right.
What was the earliest memory you have of wanting to be a musician?
Wanting to be a musician would probably be in high school. Wanting
Okay.
to be a jazz musician would have been in college
Hmm.
because I actually didn't like jazz
Hmm.
until I started taking like jazz improv classes and piano lessons. I didn't have piano lessons until I was 19. So just when I started to understand like what jazz musicians were dealing with, the skill that they need to have, but also just kind of the joy of really being spontaneous and improvising in the moment, which to me is the greatest thing that happens is when you play something you've never played before because the people or places around you inspire to do it.
Yeah.
Um, I didn't know about any of that in high school. I was in a shitty stage band with a alcoholic director, and I was
What
playing
did you play? What instrument did you play?
tenor sax.
Ah,
And like I remember taking a solo on the Gilbert O'Sullivan tune, "Alone Again Naturally." You know that song?
yeah, sure.
And that was my big moment, and the solo was written out. I don't know whose transcribed solo, for easy jazz beginner it was, but I didn't even know at that time that people improvised that stuff. We were
Oh.
we were that far away from it. So at Oberlin, I took a jazz improv class, and I was like, "Whoa, I like this."
Hmm.
So I took a year off. I moved home. I actually finally took piano lessons, and my goal originally was still kind of to be a progressive rock musician because that was the music I liked in high school a lot. Um, and then once I started working on jazz, my opinions changed a lot. I still like listening to some prog stuff, but jazz is my favorite art form.
Well, and over the last decade or so, you introduced a lot of electronic instruments and electronic music into your repertoire. Does
Yeah.
that go back to your prog roots, or is that an outgrowth of jazz, would you say?
No, no, definitely goes back to my prog roots. And
Yeah.
when I was at Oberlin, more than jazz improv or any theory classes, I was taking all their electronic music classes.
Mm,
And that's obviously different from like using sound design on a jazz tune or something like that. But, it was more like contemporary classical music, but I really loved synthesizers. And
mm.
I had a mini Moog, and that was kind of my favorite stuff. And then I gave it all up, became a jazz purist for like 30 years maybe. And then I'm like, "Oh, okay, I'm in my 60s, I should do the music I really, really want to make."
Yeah,
And
of
that
course.
includes some electronic sounds because I really enjoy that part of it.
Well, we'll hear some of that too in some of the tunes we're going to play here. So
Yeah.
you didn't start taking lessons and piano lessons until you were 19?
Right. Maybe even 20. I'm not
Wow.
sure.
Because after I met Don, and Don was a really big influence on me, he also played piano and drums and everything. I decided I want to learn the piano at 18. And I went to the place where I took my drum lessons when I was 13. And I sat down, and the guy who taught me brought out this book that was designed for basically elementary school kids. And that's how I started. And, I started with middle C and I did my scale. And it was like, I was already kind of noodling with some kind of jazzy stuff. And I just said, this is what I'm going to do now for my 30 bucks a week. I'm going to, so I kind
Yeah.
of lost interest in that. I'm just really impressed that you started taking lessons late in life. You obviously stayed with it and you had a passion for it. So your bio on your website, by the way, folks, we can't get into Bill's entire bio because that would take an hour and a half because he's done so much stuff. But if you go to billanschall.com, you'll see, and go to the About page, you'll see everything he's did. I was intrigued by the fact that you did a lot of traveling. You backed up a singer for a long time. It
Yeah.
says that you composed, you did a lot of composing. Some of that stuff actually showed up on a bunch of TV shows, including one of my favorite all-time shows, The Wire. I must know what song, where that song, what did you do for that show?
Well, I don't want to overstate like my contribution. It's always in the background. It's not like I wrote for that show
Right. So it's
or
incidental
that
music
you
basically that they
right,
needed for a specific scene or
right.
whatnot. Well,
So I you
what episode's it in? Do you know?
I I think one is called Duck and Cover.
Oh
I
yeah.
actually had two songs on the wire.
Okay.
One of them I remember specifically. There was a guy at a bar approached by a Russian prostitute, I think, and they played a song of mine in the background that was like a very gentle, like almost lullaby waltz, which makes no sense, but they put so much reverb on it that it just sounded like an acoustical nightmare, which
That's
I
all
guess is
right.
what they were going for.
Folks, we're going to hear a couple of Bill's songs in their entirety. So the first tune I'm going to play is a song from your latest collection, your latest album, which is called Improbable Solutions.
Mhm.
And the song is called Ambulator. This is original music. And tell us who the musicians are with you on this.
Sure. Let's see. Bassist is Chris Seimer, who is on just about all my stuff. Drummer's a younger guy named Brad Bull, who's a great player. And then I've got Brian Monroney on guitar, and the electronic sounds you hear come from him. In this case, on the original recording that I made, I had all kinds of weird sounds and stuff that
Hmm.
I added to it. But in this band, I only play piano, and Brian's got a pedal board with literally 19 in sequence pedals, so
Well,
he can sound like anything. On the tune you're going to play, I think at one point he uses a organ patch kind of, but all the kind of spacey atmospheric effects come from him.
cool. All right. And so, folks, without further ado, here is Bill Anschell's Quartet and the tune Ambulator. about that song is that recurring theme, that bum ba ba dum bum bum, it states in the
Mhm.
beginning, comes back over and over. Where and how did you write that song? And how do you write in general? Do you sit at your piano and say, okay, I'm going to write now? Or does stuff float around in your brain and then when you get around to it, you sit down and write it?
It's kind of a combination of those. I don't write at the piano,
Hmm,
almost never.
really?
Yeah, for a couple of reasons. One is I don't want to wind up writing things just because they happen to feel good to my hands.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and the other thing is it's really good ear training. I write away from the piano and I make myself hear all the parts in my head.
Oh, so you don't
And
even play anything. You just kind of you sing it up here and and then you eventually write it, you actually you transcribe it.
yeah, exactly. And to me, that makes music more melodic if you force yourself to be able to actually hear it in your head rather than working out patterns on an instrument, you know.
Yeah.
And for whatever reason, I find composing much easier than playing. I've been a pretty maniacal practicer since I was 20, just because I felt like, all these people have technique and all this stuff, and I'm just trying to catch up. And only in the last year have I just given myself a break and said it's okay not to practice some days.
You're still gigging and performing, so I mean
Yeah.
that's doing it for real anyway. So it's not
Yeah.
like
I mean,
you're gonna lose it, right?
well, you lose dexterity, I think, and there's just always new, especially on piano where fingering is a large part of the challenge. There are always new things I can work on that put my hands into or put my fingers in different patterns that they might not find otherwise.
Well, so you talk about practicing. This reminds me of a passage in the book,
Uh-huh.
the story called Searching for Glory at the Syncopated Cellar. Is the Syncopated Cellar a real place, or did you make that name up?
I made the name up, but other than that, it's a real place.
Okay, so you talk, this is,
The
there,
story is true.
okay, good, because, and I mean, folks, you just got to read the story. And by the way, excerpts of the stories exist on Bill's website, billanschell.com. But I mean, Christ, people spend 15 bucks or 20 bucks on the book, for God's sake. It's a great
Thank
read.
you.
But you talk about this gig here where, and you say that to play at the Syncopated Cellar, the good news is there's a piano there. The bad news is that you have to suffer through the drumming of Louis. Louis the drummer, he's the owner of the joint, right?
Right.
And what you say about Louis is that let's see. Louis wants to bash. Louis is 75% deaf, and Louis just likes to play loud. And that means everybody kind of has to adjust to Louis, I guess, right? And I'm sure you've
Mhm.
actually had that kind of experience, right?
Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. And in the case of this particular man whose name is not Louis, there's a lot more to adjust to than just volume.
Then part of the gig of playing at the Syncopated Cellar is uh, playing. Well, I'm gonna read a passage here that describes a key player in this particular venue. With an impending sense of doom, I turn my attention to my nemesis, an unwieldy colossus known among its victims as the Whore. The Whore is an 88 key nightmare that's my appointed vehicle, and I tentatively run up and down the keyboard as a driver might test bad brakes before a long trip. Some keys go down and don't come back up. One won't go down at all, and a few others strike two notes at once. All of these defects pale before the greater out of tune condition, which casts the entire musical experience in a hellish backdrop of throbbing dissonance. Man, I don't know where you learned to write like this, but I love that.
Yeah, thank you.
And so that really, and so you really played on that on a piano that was like that, huh?
Oh, fuck yeah. Yeah, it was brutal. I think I say in there that it was a three beer piano, and that's being generous. I mean, what you do on a piano like that is you drink until you feel like you're playing good, even though you probably aren't.
And then comes my favorite story of the collection, which I mentioned earlier. And I think this is the most recent story you wrote, The Weekend Warriors, correct? That's the
Yeah,
newest
it's
story in
just
the
a few
collection.
years ago.
This is about basically it's a gig at a wedding reception at a Westin hotel, right? Was
hmm
there an actual wedding reception at a Westin hotel?
Well, I mean, it wasn't at the West, and once
Or was
again,
that
the
another
name was
hotel?
changed to protect the guilty, but it was a It was an upscale hotel in Atlanta.
And it was a wedding, right?
Yeah, and the way I describe the load in and everything is 100% accurate.
Yeah, and the load in, you talk about, moving dollies full of instruments across through the kitchen and the sticky floor with the God knows what's on the floor. And boy, that just rings so true of the resort where Don and I worked at. You step just walking is like a chore.
Yeah.
But this is the band where you played with a drummer that you call Bam Bam and a piano player. Uh, so on keyboards was Piss
Yeah.
Face. Let me read you a little bit about Piss Face. Piss Face, folks. On keyboards was Piss Face, who had played a few too many solo piano gigs over his long and declining career. For the last 20 years, he'd held down a background gig at a fancy hotel lobby where he was subjected to a parade of indignities. And then there's a story about a night when he was playing and an attractive woman left what was like a little folded up piece of paper on top of the piano, and he couldn't wait to see what it was. Gosh, was it her phone number? Was it an invitation? Was it the name of a song? And he opened it up, and it was her wadded up gum. Pissface's name, as you write, came from his fixation with his own secretions. I love that. And that figured prominently the night he'd been gifted the snotty gum. This was the stuff of legend quite possibly propagated by Pissface himself. So he seemed to revel in these stories of his own disgust. Let's see. On his next set, while keeping a groove going with his left hand, he used his right hand to drink a glass of wine, then unzip his fly and urinate in the empty wine glass with tremendous precision. When he ended the song, he surreptitiously zipped himself up and put the glass, by all appearances, a fine, untouched pour of white, at the far end of the piano, savoring the moment when one of the guests tried to take a sip. It never actually reached the guest's lips because Pissface, I just love you thought of this. Pissface had eaten asparagus for lunch. And as anybody who knows who's eaten asparagus, well, we won't go there. But the tale earned him tremendous respect from his fellow musicians. People, Bam Bam and Piss Face. What more do I need to say here? The story is excellent. Everything in this book is great. And it's peppered with a lot of chunks from your column, right? And we go back to Mr. PC's Guide to Jazz Etiquette and Bandstand Decorum. Do you still write this column? Do you still do this?
Yeah, I'm overdue to post one because I was working on the book so much, but
Gotcha.
I have, a, on my computer, I've got like probably 80 questions and answers that I just haven't got to the point where I'm really happy with them. And
Right.
that's what I always do. I just keep working on them till I feel like maybe they're funny.
Yeah. And so I'm going to read one of them. This is, again, one of the questions that came to Mr. PC. Dear Mr. PC, why do saxophonists always play so many notes? Signed, Suffocating in St. Louis. Mr. PC writes, Dear Suffocating, think of a race car furiously trying to separate itself from the pursuing pack, its engine emitting a fearsome roar. Or a B movie where the damsel in distress runs from a terrifying beast frantically screaming. So it is with the saxophonist, who lets loose torrents of ear piercing notes as he desperately tries to shake free. Only in a cruel and heart wrenching twist, the monstrosity he's trying to escape is his own wretched sound. Now, I know you don't really think that way about saxophone. Well, maybe you do,
No,
but the
no,
saxophonist who you've collaborated with, I'm thinking here of Brent
definitely
Jensen.
that description does not fit him at
Yeah, and
all.
you can tell you've done a few albums with him. You've done a duo album with him that was highly regarded and really well reviewed.
I have a more telepathic connection to him than any other musician I work with. We just
Really.
because we try to just one guy will start playing and the other guy will figure out, oh, this is a song, I should know this song, and then we'll just go in just all kinds of weird places.
We're going to play another tune right now. Uh, this is the Thelonious Monk tune Mysterioso. This has electronics in it, and it's got some pretty cool and different electronics in it, right?
Yeah, and those all come from Brian. I'm just playing piano on that.
Tell us who the band members are again playing this tune.
Okay, they're the same guys on the as on the last one. It's Brian Monroney on guitar, Chris Seimer on bass, and Brad Bull on drums.
Okay, and so here we have Thelonious Monk's Mysterioso. out on an all electronic version of John Coltrane's tune Naima. This is one of my favorite songs here. This is from the album called Impulses. And you told me earlier this everything on here is electronically generated, correct?
Right.
And so does
That was
that
my
mean you're the only musician on this?
yes.
So you did everything here on a computer.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you spending the time. It was a pleasure and a privilege to meet you. You are one of the most accomplished musicians I've ever met, and you're still working. Thanks so
Well,
much for being with me. Without further ado, we're going to go out with Naima. Bill, be well. Take care and good luck.
thank you for the great interview. You were well prepared. I appreciate it.
You bet.